No Man's Sky then, today. Final Fantasy XIV then, today. Cyberpunk 2077 then, today. The day before then? Oh, wait a minute. All examples of, if it is broke, fix it. It makes me sad to think of all the games out there that could have been fixed and just got abandoned because the failure of the launch discouraged them so badly things crumbled apart. However, just because these games are absolute bangers now, they are forever tainted by the launch. No matter how far these games run, no matter how much you try to convince someone it's worth playing today, you will hear these 7 words. Yeah, but remember how bad it was? But today, I will once again stand as witness to testify that Fallout 76, one of the victims of those 7 words, is actually alright. So now you're dabbling in Fallout because the TV show told you it wasn't just another generic title, and you decided to do a little research and stumbled across the typical consensus of Fallout 1 and 2, just read the lore. Fallout 3, too dated. Fallout New Vegas, perfect in everyone, absolute masterpiece, oh my gosh! Fallout 4, literally you will die if you play this. Fallout 76, ditto Fallout 4, but with friends. But you've heard the murmuring that 76 is actually a well-rounded title, runs far better now, and although misses a lot of the RPG elements that make Fallout, it's worth a go. And those murmurs are right. Fallout 76 is, in my opinion, the one for explorers and adventurers. Back at the launch day, 76 was nothing but a desolate, broken wasteland, literally, of constant game crashes, game-breaking bugs, horrendously unbalanced everything. PvP was about as fun as eating a cinder block. There was a severe lack of endgame content, and finally, it was boring. The main campaign was picking up and listening to holotapes. In fact, most quest lines were that exact way. Go here, listen to how they died. Oh no, I'm getting attacked by the thing that attacked that guy and killed him. Now I'm gonna one-shot it with this gun. Thank goodness that's nothing like what it is today. See, Bethesda knows how to create great game worlds, and Fallout 76 had potentially one of the best worlds ever made for it, and they completely wasted it at launch. You might even say it was a wasteland waste of land. The mundane adventures you went on to actually fascinating locations usually ended up in you saying, wow, that sure is cool. Hopefully one day this place matters, and then leaving. But on April 14th, 2020, Wastelanders hit, and all of that changed, and has continued to maintain decency since. Not perfection, but finally a game really worth your time. You see, most of you will now never get to experience what was, I believe, the original intention to absolutely floor our jaws with 76. And that's because they fumbled the launch so ridiculously bad. For a year and a half, we wandered alone, afraid, with only now removed from the game legendary 2-shot explosive faster fire rate 50 cal rifles to help us and the 16 hackers in the server survive. Then, after that year and a half of content added, removed, teased, delayed to 2020, delayed again to April, Wastelanders arrived. The NPCs that we could actually interact with, and I quite literally mean this, it was game-changing and saving. If you were there from the beginning to watch this absolute train wreck dumpster fire evolve slowly into something this exciting, watching all the new players flood in, paid streamers stream it, and actually have enough fun to return without the check, you knew they hit gold with this expansion. Gold bullion, that is, because they just had to add a new currency to the game, I guess. And now there's like 5 different types of currencies on top of caps. It's like if your state just decided at one point, hey, you know what would be fun? If everybody just made money in different currencies and constantly had to convert it over. That sounds like a really fun idea. Anyways, you had 2 massive factions added to the game, the Raiders and the Settlers, each with their own actually interesting campaigns to help establish the wasteland. And then you had the Raiders and the Cultists, which still amazes me that up until this update, we had never fought any human enemies, just robots, cryptids, mutants. Heaps of new locations across the map got overhauls to create new areas over the old ones, bases for enemies, new towns, new places for quests. They gave a reason to these absolutely abandoned places. This was Fallout 76's redemption arc. Just a shame most players will never understand the significance of this update. And since then, they just continue to polish the game, bringing new quests, events, bosses, locations, enough to completely sideline the original campaign stuff as secondary, bringing actual endgame content to do. So, that catches us up to when 76 got good. But enough of the history lesson. Why is it still worth playing today? Are there still bugs and issues? Well, yes to both, and there always will be bugs and issues, but a heck of a lot less than launch. And no worse now than games like Helldivers, but folks seem to hyperfixate on the games that used to be fun to crap on. Because this is hands down the Fallout that plays the best with the most amount of diversity with gameplay. Next to Fallout 4, it's the most new Fallout player friendly, but it still falls pretty short in terms of story compared to that of, say, New Vegas. And while I highly recommend New Vegas to Fallout fans wanting a really in-depth story, most of us New Vegas Day 1 players forget that unmodded, that gameplay is abysmal. But 76 is about survival, crafting, exploring, and most importantly, making light of absolutely nuking a part of America. You see, Fallout 4 introduced base building and far more intricate gear crafting, forcing you to pick up every micro-atom obtainable in a 50-foot radius. However, by the time you grabbed everything and went back to the base to build, you were reminded, oh yeah, the building sucks. And then went back out into the wasteland, but it was already too late. Picking up everything in existence was now ingrained in your brain. 76 took this concept and said, hey, why don't we do that, but make it not bad? And so they did. So now you get your own little plot of land to build on pretty much wherever you want, and there's a built-in flying camera, not to mention you can get vaults or cities if you feel your credit card magically floating towards the screen. I know people that spend most of their time doing the building stuff just because it's so expensive. And so I thought, hey, to puff up my ego and compare my beautiful house to a bunch of inferior ones, I'll ask the community to post their houses. And it turns out they're all architects. Okay, so I can only fit so many of these houses into this segment of the video, and I'm gonna try to show off as many as I possibly can here, but look at what these people are building! I'm not even playing the same game as them! I'm out here surviving off of eating dead possums, or at least they were playing dead, and these people are raising up teacups, pinky out, scoffing in my direction. But it just goes to showcase what you can actually do with this system, how much freedom they've finally given players to build exactly what they're going for, and not limiting what they can do. And then there's me, over in the corner, ripping glue off my hands from building a wooden wall. And the gear in this game feels unlimited. Sure, 80% of it becomes obsolete almost immediately, but it's fun to have nevertheless. The sheer amount of craftable items is insane, and the good pieces actually require you to do a bit of grinding to craft, so it's not just instantly giving you perfection. You gotta go out and be intentional with the resources you're collecting. You gotta collect or buy notes from players, and those blueprints slowly accumulate into the most massive pile of things you'll probably never craft, but hey, at least you have them. And on that note, they completely rebalanced the entire game. Instead of being zone level based, they just changed it to character level scaled, so now you die just as easily wherever you go. And plus, it's not just Deathclaws or Jaguars you're fighting. Fallout 76 also has the most expansive arsenal of abominations they send after you. You got your scorched, ghouls, rad scorpions, different robots, Mirelurk variations, heaps of insects, the Underminer from The Incredibles, and then you've got those cryptids, which are way more fun to find on your own, so I'm not going to spoil all of those. On top of that, 76 also massively changed how the series builds your character in comparison to the other games, and depending on how they could spin it in a balanced way for a solo RPG title, I like this system the best. You get perk cards and a set amount of levels, up to 50 to jam into whatever special points you want, so depending on how you want your build to work, you just need to allocate those points, giving you enough room to slap in those cards that you can easily swap around at any time. Now let's take a second to appreciate the world design in this game. Listen, I know a lot of Fallout players love their piss-filtered desolate wasteland of flat nothing where the tallest things are rocks and trees, but I've spoken to enough people to know that that environment does not tickle everyone's fancy. Fallout 76 takes a mostly untouched area where the bombs only affected portions of it and made an unbelievably enjoyable map to explore. I loved all the previous Fallout maps, don't get me wrong, they each brought a certain unique spin on how badly America was nuked into the Stone Age, but Appalachia is like this pause to breathe some fresh air, having multiple biomes, area-specific weather that you can see from afar. They knew players wanted a little more to explore than the same old abandoned desert building number 34, and knocked this map out of the park with detail. So you've got heaps of story content, a beautiful world, gear to grind out, houses to build, enemies to fight, builds to, well, build. Where does this all end up? Well, if you ask a veteran who's played for 3,000 hours, they'd probably say something like, "There's no content at the end, it's just a mindless grind." And, well, they're like 50% right. 76 was never built to be this never-ending spout of endgame content, especially not in the way MMOs like WoW, ESO, or Final Fantasy are built. It's always prioritized its stories over everything else since Wastelanders. So there's a solid amount of content for you to grind out before even hitting level 50, and then there are hundreds of hours of random side questing, locations to explore, and more casual content to complete. But it does kind of feel like it all comes to a snap end at some point. There's this illusion of an eternal end game, but those dailies get old, events run dry, and all of a sudden you realize that the real end game is grinding 7,600 hours until Fallout 5 releases. And inventory management, because holy friggin' A, you are gonna spend half a lifetime debating on whether or not those 50 rotten dog legs are sentimental enough to keep smushed in with all your other stuff. And I mean this seriously, if you have problems dropping stuff, this is your end game. It's not that there's no end game content, it's that all the end game content gets almost immediately monotonous. But, like I said, it takes a worthwhile playtime to get to that point. Then, they did introduce quote-unquote dungeons, which were called daily ops, and they're essentially speedrun missions that are fun the first couple of times, randomized enemy encounters and whatnot, but they get old real quick. Then they added big daily ops, expeditions, which are roughly half-hour to hour-long dungeons, usually wanting you to group up to handle the tougher enemies inside, taking you to new, smaller locations, and although these are more fun, they really aren't a challenge at some point, and to wait a full year for an hour-long experience update makes the game feel like it was slowly fading out. But after a long season since Wastelanders came out, they're finally adding an entirely new chunk to the map this year, so that should keep things lively for all the new players hopping in. But like I mentioned earlier, there are absolutely still problems with this game. Things like building interiors not allowing your character to walk normally, you just glitch around or get stuck. Enemies teleporting around, bosses hovering, I guess. Or things that haven't been patched out for years, like being able to glitch through walls, which, well, will completely ruin quests because you can just Terminator your way through. I haven't encountered anything game-breaking in years, however, mostly just little annoyances, but the engine definitely shows its age with some of these things that just shouldn't be a problem being a problem. But where Fallout 76 really does shine amidst all of this is the ability to immerse yourself into a wasteland that feels malleable. You do get to make some major story decisions here and there, but that's not what I'm talking about. The whole time you're playing, whether just roaming about or with an objective in mind, it's the first Fallout that has this illusion of never-ending exploration, which is way more fun than the never-ending endgame. New things pop out at you each time you go back to a location. Different enemies meander into areas you didn't think you'd find them, and when you finally get to dropping nukes yourself, you get entirely new zones within those zones to explore if you're equipped to deal with what's inside. I remember the game had a lot of content when it first came out, it was just pretty mediocre. I can imagine for new players joining today, this is like trying to drink out of a fire hose. However, I will note that the game, regardless of it being the newest and most kept up to date Fallout, it's dated. The engine is huffing and puffing, keeping this game alive as best as it can, but you will definitely notice that the creation engine has met its match here. It's showing its age and no amount of slathered on paint can cover that up. Regardless, it's still an experience worth playing for hesitant fans or new players to the game entirely. It's not the best Fallout, it's not the worst, but yes, Fallout 76 is good now.